speaker today is Tom Baker. Now, a few minutes ago, I mentioned how our celebration of Christmas has become very eclectic over the years, incorporating traditions from many different sources, and that's a good thing. Likewise, Tom Baker, over the course of his life, has become very eclectic, incorporating knowledge and wisdom and insights from many different sources, and that's a good thing. Tom is a professional counselor that gives a lot of understanding of the human condition. He's a former Catholic priest that provides a lot of information. And he's a student of the near-death and interlife experience, and that provides insights that are as fresh from the source as we can usually get. So please welcome our friend, our brother, our teacher, Tom Baker, and his Christmas message.
Well, I am a teacher in the course in miracles, so you would expect that I have performed miracles. Yet I have had only one miracle attributed to me. It happened in my second year as a priest at Midnight Mass. I was giving my sermon, and a baby began to cry. Now, usually when this happened, what would occur would be I would turn away from the baby, and everybody's attention would go to me, and then the mother would get the hint, and she would leave. I would sort of shun her in a way. But this mother on that midnight mass was in the middle of the church. And it was a packed church, so she couldn't move. She couldn't leave. And the baby just was crying and screaming. You know, babies sometimes get to the point where they're just screaming, It's sort of like me against you. And I felt like going down and feeding it or something. But I stopped. And I said, "Tonight, I love the crying of this child. It reminds me that 2,000 years ago, the crying of a child was the voice for God. And maybe it still is." And just like that, the baby stopped crying. Well, there was a hush in the church that is a hush beyond quiet. It's the feel of people listening to silence. And people chuckled. And afterwards they proclaimed it a miracle. But I remembered the hush, the moments so quiet and bright and still that you might hear the music and light, or might believe that on a night like Christmas Eve, that the cry of a child was truly the voice of God. Christmas has that earthy miracle to it. Christmas is earthier than Easter. Easter is a little intimidating. The recently dead Jesus walking around in a cemetery. A little spooky, and Jesus is a bit distant. He tells Mary Magdalene not to hug him, too holy for hugs. That he's on his way to heaven. And Easter is puzzling. It's transcendently puzzling, but puzzling all the same. Christmas, on the other hand, is familiar. A mother having a baby, the reservations fall through, Joseph has to think on his feet, and Jesus is born amidst the patient curiosity of animals, and his birth is attended by a cross-section of humanity. Shepherds and astrologers. It reminds me of the ARE. Jesus, in effect, arrives at Ellis Island and soon becomes a refugee, sneaking off to Egypt, pursued by King Herod's stormtroopers. Christmas is God on our terms, living what feels like our accidental existence. He's born in a Bethlehem garage. He hides out in an Egyptian basement and grows up in a carpenter shop in the tiny town of Nazareth. He's a person. God shows up as a person. Where is God? In the person. The essence of Christianity is that God meets us in a person. I remember another Christmas Eve, I went to the hospital to visit a 92-year-old woman who was dying. Her name was Mrs. Murray. And I had brought her communion every first Friday for about a year. She liked me because I was never in a hurry. I'd hang out with Miss Murray. I hung out because I didn't want to go back to the rectory and face Father Doherty, who always called me Father. Hello, Father. And he had a correction to make. He forgot to turn the lights off in the sacristy. I was always doing something that wasn't priestly. But Mrs. Murray didn't seem to care if I acted priestly or not. She called me Tom. And with her I could be a person, and she always had cookies for me. She also always went to confession, and she always had the same sin that she had committed in exactly the same way. It was a minor sin, a venial sin. And she kept count 159 times, 186 times. And I kept telling her that she could round it off. But she always considered God to be very exacting. She liked it that I was never shocked at her sin, and liked it even more that I told her I did the same thing but never could keep records as accurate as hers. She looked at me like, well, you're still young, Tom. So Mrs. Murray and I were friends, and when I walked into her hospital room, there was a team of medical people shocking her heart with paddles. Her children, 6 of them, were out in the hall. After the medical team had brought Mrs. Murray back to life for the 5th time in 2 days, she called me to her. You've got to help me out of here. My kids won't let me go. Those paddles are breaking my ribs. I can hear them crack. So I talked to the kids, all middle-aged, older than I. I thought it would be easy. I'd say, your mom, she's 92, she's ready to go. Let her die, for heaven's sake. Every one of them said they were not going to be the one to let their mother die. Oh, not me. And besides, she was not in her right mind. She was old. The nurses said the same thing. I was amazed. They were unbending. Finally, we settled on what had to be done. I had to sign a release that I, the priest, speaking for the patient, Mrs. Murray, asked that no extraordinary measures be used and that I, the priest, was the responsible party. Mrs. Murray wrote her quivering name on the certificate, and I wrote my quivering name on the certificate. The children looked at me like I was Father Kevorkian. So I did a daring thing then. I climbed in bed with Mrs. Murray and held her as her breathing became more and more shallow. And then quite suddenly, but gently, she relaxed and was completely gone. I looked up at the clock and it was 12 midnight. Christmas Day. The family was standing at the end of the bed, all sagging, all tired, scared, ashamed, all people being people. And I said, I was your mother's friend, and she's okay. In fact, she's in heaven for Christmas. And we all cried the way people do when they've lost someone who noticed them for who they were. I felt like Jesus that night, holding Jesus in the middle of Jesus. That's what Jesus did. In fact, that's all he did. He just noticed you for the person you were. And you felt real. Jesus noticed the real in things. Edgar Casey says that when Jesus turned the water into wine, the water saw its master and blushed. Isn't that lovely? The water saw its master and blushed. Your true master is anyone who makes you real. One of my masters is Steve Boesen. When I was in college, I wanted desperately to be known, not in a surface way, but deeply, deeply down deep, the deep, deep, deep me that I was. Know me deeply, but nobody did. So I moved into a little house, and on the walls of the bathroom, I wrote all of my poems, thinking that friends using my bathroom in a moment of reflection would come out and say, "Wow, that's amazing." But people never did. They came out and they say, "Somebody wrote all over your bathroom." Or they'd say, "Somebody's on some powerful drugs. They wrote all over your bathroom." Then one day Steve goes into the bathroom and I hear these odd sounds like, "Ooh, ah," and exclamations like, "Of course, how true." And he comes out and he says, "Baker, they're great. Are these yours? There's wisdom on those walls. Is that you?" "Yes," I said, "that's me." That's what I call a Jesus moment. Now, Boesen has not led a pious life. He's broken several of the 10 Commandments in more of the ways than Mrs. Murray could ever dream. And to his credit, like Mrs. Murray and many good Catholics, he's tried to keep count. But of course, God does not keep count the way we do. God counts the times when we see another person for the person they are. Boesen has done that for many people, and so have you. Maybe you did it for your child, or for your mother, or your father, or husband, or wife, or friend. When we see and acknowledge people for the miracle they are, I think it's Christmas for God. That's His Christmas. When we look at another person and we say, "I see you. I see the Christ in you. I see the light in you." God says, it's Christmas. Meister Eckhart said that God is looking through the same eyes that we are. Divinity is looking at you through me, and divinity is looking at me through you. That was the message of Jesus, and it's real. Whether it's a person in need, or the cry of a baby, or the laughter of someone you love, or simply sunlight streaming through a window, it's always God calling, saying, "I'm here. I know you, and I'm ready." Merry Christmas.